Hey everyone, Brad the mechanic here. Today we're working on a 2004 finding at Grand Prix. I got it running here, and I got a little, I use an exhaust tube so that doesn't go in the garage. Got a coolant leak. I removed the coil pack and reinstalled it so I could start it so I could show you. It's actually leaking from right behind there. And what's happening, everybody was like, it's a water pump, it's a water pump. Well, I looked, and the water pump wasn't bad. It wasn't leaking out of there. It's actually leaking from the timing cover, and there's a coolant passage that goes right in through here. And it's where the water pump pumps in, and it goes in, and it starts leaking through there. So today we're going to remove the front timing cover and all this other stuff and change the gaskets on there, because there isn't actually any YouTube videos of it step by step. I know it's really easy, but not everybody works on cars and not everybody sees it as that. So I'm going to make a step by step on how to do this. Bolts, nuts. There's two 11 mils right here, and then there's two 10 mils that hold the coolant jug on. And I had already taken three actually 15 mil nuts that came off of the coil. This coolant reservoir is I'm going to pull it straight up, and there's plastic tube or rubber hose that you got to take off. And if you see right here, this goes on to a little piece down here, so you have to pull it straight up in order to get it off. And now I will show you the place where, so the coil pack sits here like this, and underneath it are some long studs with this ground that you got to make sure you keep on there. So these long studs have these nuts on them, and you got to take a 15 mil, pull these off. And then there's two on this bottom side here, or it's actually this side right here. There's two nuts, and then you pull this to the side, whoop, and then you can pull it up. But you do have to take all these off in order to get this to slide out. I reinstalled the plug wires so that I could run the car and diagnose the leak. So with that, this will probably be one of the first things you do. You could pop all these off. I number them just so that it makes it way easier to put it back on. These are all numbered, but this way you don't have to see where they're actually going. You can just label them. That's what I did. So do that. Then we're gonna get the serpentine belt off here, and yeah, so I'll get the tool to do that. So there's this little clip right here that you twist. Boom. And then you can get this out of the way. So now we're going to take that serpentine belt. So I have the serpentine belt tensioner tool, but you don't need this. This is just to make my life a little bit easier. Come on. All you need is a 15 mil and like a long ratchet to do it. Or even, you can even do it with a 15 mil wrench if you wanted to. So this will go right here, and you're actually going to be moving it to the left. So I got it on there, and I'm going to be pushing it up, and you can see the tension comes off the belt. So I'm going to do that and remove the belt. So you have to pull it off of this smooth pulley. Makes it a lot easier than trying to pull it off of a grooved pulley. So now, just gonna get this off of there. Try to remember which way you put the thing on, the belt, or which way the belt's on. It can make it a little bit easier when you're going to put it back on. Otherwise, Google has the answer. Not for everything, but it's good for stupid stuff like this. So, now that we have removed that, we are going to remove the coolant hose from the bottom here, and it's probably going to release the coolant, so I'm going to put a drain pan under there. And then, looks like we're going to have to remove this alternator, get this out of the way, this tensioner out of the way. These are pretty straightforward, so I might not show every single step of doing this, but these are all 15s. 15. Back here is usually a 1/2 inch or a 13 mil right here. So you pop that off, and then there's a little clip on the back of the alternator that you'll pinch down in order to remove that. So yeah, I'm gonna try to work at that. I'll make sure that that's how it's done. I don't know. Yeah. So it looks like the heater hoses might have to come off. So let's get it torn apart and see what happens. So yeah, we're going to take this coolant hose off, and I'm going to remove the alternator and the tensioner assembly. Alright, so we're going to get this started here. Just down here at the end of this thing, there's this little bar. It has a 10 millimeter. You got to remove that first. Get that popped off. Boom, just like that. And then we have the 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter for the power. Now you're going to want to make sure you dislocate the battery before you do this, so that you know this, because if this touches the ground somewhere, it can spark and it can short out some stuff or just scare the crap out of you. Get that off. There we go. Now what I always do is I always take this rubber boot and I put it over there. Even though I undid the battery, it's still good to make sure that that's not going to hit anything. So next one is a 15 mil, and then that 10 mil was on the end of this. I don't know if this one will fit down there very well, but we'll see. A lot of guys say not to use these on stuff like this. I mean, this has a torque setting, so you can have it very low according to how you put the trigger. So, yeah, okay, so now there's one more 15 mil down here that we're going to pop off. And that will then remove the alternator once we get the clip taken off of there for the control. So next we're going to take off the heater core hoses. You can use needle nose pliers like these to get them off. It's a little bit harder because of the angle. So if you get a tool like this, this is a it's specially designed for hose clamps. It's a hose clamp tool. So when I squeeze the handle, it closes like this. So I get it back and it grabs onto both tabs, and I squeeze the handle, and as you can see, it loosens it. And so I'm going to move this up here, get this out of the way a little bit, and then I release that. I'm going to do the same thing to this one. Now, like I said, you can get channel locks or needle nose back in here to do this job. It's just a little bit tougher, but if you're watching this video, you're a do-it-yourselfer and you'll get it done. You'll figure it out one way or another. Sometimes you want to readjust it so you can get a good grip on it. There we go. You can see. So there's also a 10 millimeter. Oops, that's bolt right here, kind of holding this. Which actually, if this hose clamp, if this comes off, I'm not going to take that off. So let's see. So if you can, as you can see, this one spins, and it's going to come right off. Probably gonna leak coolant everywhere, but that's okay. Nope. So this one, as you can see, it doesn't want to spin. So it's not gonna come off until you can at least get it spinning. So what you do is you get channel locks or vice grips or needle nose, and you kind of pinch it and twist. And as you can see, it got it loose. And then once you can twist it, you can pull it off, just like that. So now we are going to move on to the fun stuff, which is removing, looks like we're going to remove the wheel and tire and get the crank pulley, because so all this stuff is going to have to come out. So I'm going to start by removing as many bolts as I can from down here and up here to get access to everything that I need. Alright, so I took 3 of the 15 mil bolts out that were right in here. One, there's another one under here, and then there's another one back right behind here. So after I did that, this thing is coming loose, okay? But it's connected by an elbow here and an elbow right there. So these already have the aluminum ones on it because these are very, they're known for breaking. They're very brittle, especially if they're the plastic ones, but these aren't. I also have some in my toolbox. I always carry some because they break so often. So when you're removing this, you're going to want to very slowly wiggle this thing back and forth without putting too much pressure on it. And you'll see as you're doing that, it'll start to come out. And what I'll do is I'll get a flathead and just barely come in here and try to push back on it a little bit while I'm prying or while I'm wiggling, and this thing will pop right out with no problems. And then you can make sure that the seals are good on it, and then you should be okay. So I'm going to keep wiggling this back and forth just like that, and then this is going to come off, and I'll show you. Alright, so when I went to take it off, this one came off fine. This one actually broke. I did reef on it pretty good. It was in there really well. It was siliconed in there, so it was stuck in there. Not a big deal. These are cheap, super easy to fix. I'm just going to pull this out of here, and I'm going to pull this one out, and I'm going to replace them both. So that's not a big deal. That's par for the course for these. So now we're going to move on, and we're going to just loosen up and move aside the power steering pump. So to take off the power steering pump, you have to put your ratchet with the either long, with a short extension or a long socket, and you have to feed it through the hole, one of the holes in the power steering pulley, in order to get it loose. And as you can see, I'll move up to this next one so you can see kind of what has to happen. So this is spinning, and then there's a hole that you got to line up that's in the pulley, and as you can see, my ratchet goes through, boom, and we can loosen that, and so then we'll be able to get this out of the way to take off the rest of the timing cover. So I got this moved out of the way, and if you see that green clip down there, that's going to have to come off because that is your oil pressure sensor, and what that does is it's plugged into the side of this timing cover, which is where the oil filter adapter is. So we're going to unplug that, and we're going to try to we might not have to take off the oil filter adapter in order to remove this. So I'm going to take that clip off, and then we're going to start taking the all the bolts out that we can see that hold on this main timing cover. Actually, we're going to have to take off the crank pulley first, but so that's going to be what we do next. So, got to take the wheel off. I'm going to lightly take these off. Just like that. And somebody really put these on tight. Alright, so I did make sure that there's a jack stand underneath the vehicle because you don't want that thing falling on you. I'll take the wheel, slide it up under here. Got a good room. So now we're gonna take off these Phillips screws and pop off these clips in order to access the lower or the crank pulley. So here's a little tip. I got my breaker bar, or my big breaker bar ratchet, and I got it in here, and I have it set so that it's just lined up straight with that, because you don't want anything going on at an angle. That's right, that's a 24 millimeter. I have it set up like that, and then it's stopped by the tie rod end so it can't go anywhere. So then I went in there and I started the car, or attempted to start the car real quick, bumped the key, boom, 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 and it finally busted this loose. So it's going to be probably the hardest part of doing this is getting this loose, but if you can do it that way, it's going to be the easiest way. You could even use a wrench if you had to, get it in there just right. It's a 24 millimeter, and then you can turn that starter, and it turns clockwise, so then you'll be able to loosen it that way, because it takes a lot of torque to loosen that crank pulley bolt. So we got the crank pulley, or crank bolt out. Boom. So now you're going to need to use a pulley puller tool to, excuse me one sec. So this is the harmonic balancer puller. This is going to go in here, and then these 3 bolts are going to screw into the pulley, and then you can screw this in, and it pushes in through here, and it'll pull that pulley out. So I'll show you how that works. Alright, so I had to actually get another puller set because the bolts wouldn't fit in there. I had to get the right size bolts because you have to have 3 in there. The kit that I got, that one didn't have the right stuff, so I had to go get my old one, and it seems to be working out. So now we're just going to tighten this right here, and that's going to pull that pulley off of there. Boom. There you go. So now we're just going to take a little bit of this plastic retainer thing, kind of just pops off. So I'm going to pop that off, pop the crank sensor off, and we'll start taking out the bolts for the timing cover. So, as you can see, this was right up here, bolted on there. That's going to have to come off, and then right there you'll see these 3 bolts. 1, 2, 3. Those all got to come out. They're what size are they? 3/8, and those will come out. Only those 3 have to come out in order to release the timing cover, and then you can see these 13 mils are going to have to come out as well. After taking off all the timing cover bolts, there's about 6 or 8 of them. You can then pry back here and pry back here, and it'll pop out. As you can see, it has come loose. So now I'm going to pull it all the way forward and remove it from the vehicle. Alright, so now that we got it off, you can see all this gasket material. We're going to have to clean all this off and get all this off, and then we'll put the new gaskets on with a little bit of RTV and get ready to set that back on there. As you can see, we're going to need to clean all this off. I'll get the wire wheel and we'll clean it all off before reinstallation. Alright, so I got it off of there. I cleaned all the surfaces, and now I am reinstalling it, and I put RTV around the whole thing. I'm going to put some RTV in the coolant passageways for the new coolant hoses. And then we're going to put all those bolts back in for the timing cover. Alright, so after RTVing everything, I got it tightened up in there. Now we are going to move to, as you can see, there's a nice bunch of RTV down there. So now we are going to reinstall the crank sensor with 2 13 mil bolts. Right, so we got the crank sensor on there. Those bolts are tight. Now we're going to put the this little dust shield. Let's see if I can video it while I'm putting it on there. They kind of just clip on. There's the little hole for it. So once they get lined up, oh, this plug has to be unplugged in order for me to get it on there. So let me do that. So after getting that bracket or that dust shield on there, you can put the balancer pulley on there, the harmonic balancer, and then it has a keyway. So you have to make sure it's oriented just right, and then you'll feel it go on there and kind of lock. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take the bolt and we'll get it started in there, and then we'll take the impact and zip it on down, because it takes a lot of force to get that tight. It doesn't have to be, I mean, it's got to be really tight. So let's see how tight we can get it with this. That's about good. And then it pulled the pulley all the way on there like it should. And now we can move up to the top. We'll put this plastic cover on under this wheel here, and we'll be good to go for the bottom. So now we're going to take this power steering pump, pull that up there, and install the 13 millimeter bolts that hold that on there. So we got the power steering pump with the 2 13 mil bolts in. Now we're going to reattach the heater hoses, just like so, and then I'll get the tool to put those on there. Then I'm going to get the alternator. We'll set the alternator back on here, get that bolted up, get the 1/2 inch, and then get this plugged in,
get these 15 mils all plugged in, screwed in tight so that the alternator's on there. And then I will install the serpentine belt as well. All right, so just put the pulley on the water pump. And it's a little hard sometimes because you've got to turn it while it's, or spin it while it's doing it. So in order to do that, I set the screwdriver like this, and then I try to turn it, because when I get the screwdriver like that, I can then get the ratchet on there, and those will come loose. You'll figure it out. It's pretty straightforward. All right, got the alternator installed. Everything's tight. Don't forget, there's a 10 mil here, and then a 15 mil here that you'll have to tighten for that little bar. And that'll be tight. Now we're going to throw the belt on there, throw some coolant in it. This is already plugged in, so I'm going to get it started so I can see down here. And yeah, so we're going to get some coolant in it right now. All right, so we got everything tight. We got the wheel back on. We got the coils tight in there. Got the belt on. Got coolant in there. And we have no more leaks. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Yeah, like and subscribe. And by the way, this is the 2007 Grand Prix, but this will work on pretty much all the 3800 series. All right, you guys.